Welcome to Faith in the Fallout. My name is Kyle Drake. Today I have Laura back with me on the podcast. Welcome back, Laura.
Hi, I'm excited to be back.
We have other special guests here with us today, but before we introduce them, we wanted to give a brief overview of why we're doing this, just in case there are new people listening. So we started this podcast, Laura and I did about a year ago, to share our story of abuse that we experienced within Radiant Church Jackson. We did this based on 1 Timothy 5:20, but those elders who are sinning, you are to reprove before everyone so that others may take warning. Galatians 5:1, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. And, all of 1 Corinthians 5, that type of stuff. If you want more details on our story or on all those verses I talked about, we've covered it in previous episodes, so you can go dig back there. But today we have, as I mentioned, special guests with us that are going to share their story. But first, we'll turn it over to Laura. Why is sharing stories important, Laura?
Yeah, we started off in our journey of this spiritual abuse sphere, I guess you could say. We had some things at our church that we were attending that we would consider red flags, but just kept ignoring them. And then as the red flags, you could say, were mounting, this was the time when there was a podcast that went out by Remnant Radio where they interviewed the women from IHOP KC, which just stands for International House of Prayer. KC, I think, is Kansas City. Is that right? Yeah. So we listened to that and heard them talk bravely about their abuse and what they went through and the gaslighting and all of the things. And suddenly those red flags we had in the back of our mind were more serious and kind of the same. Not exactly the same, but enough that it made us want to dig a little deeper and talk to our leadership about it. So if you haven't heard our story before, we did talk to leadership, but this isn't really about us right now. We want to talk to our friends. But the reason why we think stories are important is because it helped Kyle and I hear some real life examples of what spiritual abuse is and how it actually plays out in real life. And it also alerted us to some of the things we were uncomfortable with that rightly so were serious issues. So that's why we think it's important. This is going to be the third story shared on our fourth. Yes, that's right. Fourth story shared on our podcast. So we're excited about it.
Yeah, and without further ado, we'll introduce you to Dell and Stephanie. You guys want to introduce yourself in some manner?
Hello, I am Dell Belcher. This is my voice.
And I'm Stephanie Belcher.
Yes, we are local to the area, and we know you all from various community things, good things. And so Kyle and I first talking about this like last summer.
I feel like it was a while
Yeah, it was
ago.
a long time ago.
Things just kept coming up, and now we're here. And I feel like the timing is good, and I'm glad that we get to, for ourselves and for other people, kind of unpack some things. Hopefully.
Yeah, and I should have said that we've had a lot of people who we didn't even know that listened to the podcast of our story and reached out and said how meaningful it was. So even if nothing happens, like in our case, nothing has really happened and we don't think any change has been made. But still, if we always said, if one person hears our story and realizes that something needs to change, then it's worth it. So hopefully we find the same for you guys. So thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
So where do you guys want to start? Or Stephanie, you haven't talked yet. Do you want to introduce yourself at all or just dive right in and have Dell do all the talking?
No. We can go back and forth, I think. So I think where we started was, so we were at a church called WestWinds, and it's a church in Jackson, Michigan. It's a fairly large church. So to set the scene, it's in like Jackson area of Michigan. And when you first looked it up on the website years ago, it said renowned by the New York Times because it was such an innovative, amazing church. And I grew up in a Lutheran church that was very liturgical. Dell grew up, I'll let him talk about that, but I'll say quickly, he grew up a pastor's kid. So he just came from that setting. And so we had first gotten married and we were looking for a home church that we wanted to go to together. And Dell had heard of WestWinds because he went to college in the area. And so let's go try it out. So I think someone he knew invited him to play there, play guitar or bass or something, because he plays a few instruments. And we thought, wow, that must be the calling of the Lord that we're supposed to be at this place because Dell will get to play. So we started at WestWinds there.
It's in like 2011.
Yeah.
And then we got married
maybe
in 2012.
2012, I think. But WestWinds is about 1,000-ish people, or they were. At the time, there were 3 head pastors when we started. And then they had a children's ministry, a graphic designer, an editor was kind of their layout. And they were largely set up to be a seeker church. Like the intent was to be like a landing place for people in Jackson.
And it's not just seeker. It was almost like, their signs outside, or it's like rabble rousers and rebels. And it kind of painted themselves as like, yes, there's contemporary and there's traditional church, but we're like the next thing. Like, even if you don't feel comfortable there, you'll feel comfortable here. And a lot of people did, because the music was different. The art was different. People got tattoos and sometimes say a swear word, and it's all very like, ooh, and we can have a beer and like, that's whatever. Like, okay, fine, whatever. But it's been so tabooed that these things became like, oh, like this cool factor. So it was like seeker sensitive, like overdrive, and really like, and like when you were there, it was like, yeah, like where else am I going to go? Like I like this creative place where I get to play music and wear what I want and just, be cool or whatever. And like, if I went somewhere else, I wouldn't.
They pride themselves on finding the space where previously you might have felt like you couldn't do that, and you do it at this church, so that must make it unique and special. And I think that's the draw.
Which, you mentioned, Laura, at the beginning, like red flags. And I think that, to me, became a red flag. It should have been a red flag. Later it was, because it's like, there's 35,000 people in the city of Jackson and like 100,000 people in the county. And there's so many churches. And, being an independent, non-denominational church, not even part of like a network thing, it was kind of on its own island with how it ran things. And it wasn't really accountable to anybody. Except,
we should have said it's a non-denominational church. So there's no body above the pastor. Like there's the board, or not the board.
But there was the three head pastor thing. So there's like a finance person, like a teaching pastor, and then like the creative arts worship pastor. And over time, one of them moved, the next one moved, and then you had the teaching pastor who's just there and kind of absorbed all of the oxygen of that leadership. And that's when things, I felt, started getting like more weird.
Yeah. So when we started, it was 3 separate pastors, but over the course of the first 4 years, it consolidated down to 1. If you've ever worked anywhere that has 1 person in charge, like that trickles down. So instead of it being 3 people's vision or 3 people giving you direction, it becomes 1 person predominantly.
And the second today's going to be a list of should have been red flags. If you're listening, should have red flag number 2. There is an elder board, and there were deacons, and we were part of the deacon board for a while, and we volunteered. Stephanie did Sunday school. I worked at WestWinds for 4 years or so it's been a minute. So I think, but we're estimating between 2013 and 2018. Right. So about 5 years in there he worked. So, and for me, growing up as a pastor's kid, thinking that I'm going to be in music ministry, getting undergrad and like master's in worship ministry, and then it just like not working out, finding this place that felt like accepted me and like what I could do and creatively. It's like I've been around the block a few times. Like I can't always participate the way I like, and here I can. And I feel like they really do grab hold of people like that.
Yeah, I think that was what was important for me, is when we were first married, Dell had mentioned he thought he was going to go into ministry and that would be full time. And then life didn't work that way. So he was pretty sad that he didn't get that opportunity. So I think when WestWinds stepped in and said, hey, do you want to contribute to the worship band? It felt like, oh, this must be our opportunity.
And then it went from that to you can be a worship leader to, hey, we're opening a second campus and we need campus minister pastors. This is me and another guy. And it was like, you're part-time now. You got to open the building, you're managing it, and you're kind of ahead of this little flock of people. And we'll try it for a while. And I guess I don't feel like there was a time limit. It just whatever.
Yeah, it wasn't I think that was a red flag, or should have been a red flag for me, is because they were very seeker driven. Everything was so innovative all the time. It's like, move fast, break things. It's like, okay, but what time does it start? When are you going to be there? How many people are coming? What's the infrastructure? And it was move fast, break things, and then things would just break, and it was overwhelming.
Well, I mean, it would like break people with
Break
burnout.
people.
It was
Yeah.
a lot of so many people were getting burned out. It was like a revolving door of people, of volunteers, of administrative assistants, and there was an attitude of like, well, if the attitude that I felt working there was like, well, they just couldn't keep up with it. They're just not committed enough. They're just not like serious enough about this ministry.
I'm going to add an example to what you're saying. So when Dell was on staff there, we were invited to, I can't remember if it was a Christmas party or like a get together at an elder's house, but an event like that. And WestWinds had a history. I don't know if they still do this, but they would put on this really big Christmas production, and it was all hands on deck. But it meant that we never got a Christmas while he worked there. And it was like days of preparation and decorating, and they would give out tickets, and it was this massive thing. And so we were at this dinner, and one of the pastors said, someone asked the pastor, so what would you think if we just didn't do anything on Christmas Eve or Christmas and the staff just got a day off? And he said, well, I would think they were lazy. And there was a lot of like unless you are working to the point of burnout, you are somehow lazy or less than. And I didn't know enough in my late 20s to know better.
But then here's where it gets weirder because it wasn't just the expectation of doing that. It's just that, I don't know how if we do naming names or not, but like I don't feel like the example of being well balanced was being made by the people who are in leadership. I'm in the pastor's office and, he's taking his like Amazon caffeine pills or whatever. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, not everybody can be like you or like this. And just because they don't and aren't doesn't mean they can't contribute. And that's what it was like as part of working there as leadership, going from this campus ministry, which ended up like this satellite ministry, which ended up getting shut down for various reasons, which was kind of just out of nowhere. So I think one thing though that I do want to mention is I do want to apologize to like for serious to the people who were impacted negatively or abused in WestWinds, because I feel like I was definitely part of the system. I was up there playing the music. I was up there helping run the show. I was doing the things. And like, yeah, those are all tech things or music things that I liked, but I was part of that production. That production was the platform in which this individual got to have time and take people's time and put their spirituality and their thoughts like into people. And like, I helped sustain that. And I tried to help it grow, thinking that I could do something about it. And I do feel like I was a part of that system. And so I do, apologize for that. And if I was part of hurting people in that, like, I'm just so sorry. And I repent of that. And that's not something will do anymore. So yeah, I do feel really bad about that.
I apologize for any part I played in it too. I think I agree with Dell that we were a part of a larger system. And so to pretend that we didn't contribute in some way would be ignorant. So I apologize for any abuse I supported, abuse I didn't see. I apologize for anyone that was hurt along the way. Like, I too repent of that, and we try to reflect on it and see, like, where did we go wrong? Where did we make mistakes? And moving forward, how do we not repeat that? So I sincerely apologize for anyone that was hurt. And
so after the satellite campus closed, which is another story, and how that was handled is another red flag. I was hired,
or they moved your position,
to
changed
live
it.
stream ministries for about 2 years. I got this live stream ministry running off the ground, and I feel like that's really where there was like, if you'd want to call it spiritual abuse, which I think it could qualify as like this thing that since I was a child, ministry has been all a part about my life, like grandparents or missionaries and church people, and you grow up in this. And if it's something your parents do, your dad does, you want to do that too. And youth conferences and all, you're the future, rah, rah, do ministry, give your life to the Lord. And then you do it. And it didn't happen. And I'd kind of been like, okay, I'm going to do another career. But then here was this thing. And there was talks of like, oh yeah, there's this thing. And then maybe there's be ordination, and maybe we'll be able to do more, or maybe this, and just kind of dragging me along, knowing that, because this is something that I felt God had called me to do. This wasn't me. There had been plenty of times where I'm like, I don't want to do this and I'm out. But God called me to do it. So I'm going to do it. And all I got was just like incredibly burnt out. And at the end of the day, just like tossed to the side it doesn't even matter. And then I'll get like a text. Hey, thinking about you. What happened? It's like, you know what happened.
Well, and
Don't
I
text
think
me. Don't text me like that, dude. You know what's going on.
like the dynamic that I saw from the outside, like I wasn't on staff. I was a high volunteer person, but I watched Dell's relationship with the head pastor evolve from excitement. He's going to help me evolve because he's so successful to gradually deteriorating. And as an example, Dell and the pastor he was working with were talking about how to balance the ministry plus having a personal life and a wife. And the head pastor said, oh, well, I don't talk to my wife about my problems. And we were just like, well, that's not our relationship. And I don't think that is ever going to be our relationship. And I don't think that's the advice that I'm going to take.
And that's the thing people would get hassled about too, because it was like in meetings, we'd be hearing like, you don't need to tell your spouses what's going on. You don't need to tell them about how the sausage is made. Like they wouldn't understand. Like there was this not passive aggressive, but like very dismissive of like, they don't understand. And now it's like, I don't know if you've known, but that's something like abusers and cult leaders do. So,
and looking back at it now with distance and time, I think at the time we saw it through this lens of patriarchy or something where we thought it was just the guy's supposed to be in charge. Looking back, I don't see it that way at all. Now looking back, I see it as this person was trying to create a division in space where they could totally bring you in to control you. And a way to do that is to gradually separate you from your significant other.
And that would happen because there were always things of like, we're always like projects. So like, we're always got to be at the church, extra time, be like, oh, okay, we're done at 7. I got to get home. Steph's waiting for me. And be like, oh, we got one more thing. You'd be there until like 9, 10.
And then he
You're
would
like,
get
"Oh,
home and I
wait."
would say, like, I saved dinner and it's okay if you're late occasionally, but I want to see my husband. Like, I didn't marry you to never see you.
Yeah.
And he felt terrible.
I
Like
did
he
feel-
wasn't trying to do that.
Because it's like my family and God, but God is this pastor avatar. And like people say, like, I hear a lot of people when they talk about being hurt by churches and church abuse, like, well, you should have known better. It's like, yeah, you should have known better.
Yeah, I
But like
don't
being told your
know.
whole life that God has called you to this, it's really hard to like trust yourself if you're feeling bad about it.
And so
And I think he knows that.
I'm kind of going to the timeline to say, like, your point about we should have known. It was, when I look back at it now, an abusive relationship. And when we started, it was wonderful and great. And then it gradually eroded into something terrible. So now you're working there, we're 3 or 4 years into this. And now the red flags are starting to pop up. And I feel like when we really started seeing them more and more is when that leadership structure went from 3 people in high accountability to 1 person. And then when another red flag popped up for me was when the people that started becoming on the elder board were all of the pastor's best friends and really close. And I just remember thinking, well, if they're your best friend, when are they ever going to disagree with you? And if you're picking them, how is that going to work? And so it was quickly stacked for this 1 person to just take over.
And another brick on that stack of
That's a good analogy.
Another brick on the red flag stack is you were just talking about
The leadership structure.
the leadership
elders.
structure and the elders and it was not in balance. There was no accountability, and there might have been and then it was positioned to me like this. So this live stream ministry I'm running, it's like, it's going to be like, this is kind of before streaming got to the point it is now. Like Twitch is just born, maybe. There's some platforms, YouTube, Facebook, things like that, but it's not what it is today.
Yeah, this is when Mars Hill was like pioneering.
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
Right?
And
You were
so
right on the
yeah.
right on that time.
Yeah, and like a lot of like live.church and those things were
Well, and at
happening.
one point, like, it was cool because Dell was going to start this ministry and he got to fly to Texas to meet.
Some people who also did church things.
Yeah, like a big, was it TD Jakes? I
Well,
don't
that
know.
was different. So that was Well, that's okay.
It's a
couple things
No,
going
but he
on.
got to go
That's
to
a different red flag.
Yeah. Right. I mean, come on.
we weren't necessarily agreeing with all their views or disagreeing, but it was more like we're putting this great opportunity in front of you, and it was presented that
And
way.
it was that after that of like, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. And it will push you. Because then if it was like, no, like the disagreements you would start to dry up the opportunity. Like there was a couple of different, times where I was explicitly asked for my feedback. So like with the live stream ministry, he had all these ideas and I was like, okay. And then I have some ideas too to make it run better because this is what I'm seeing.
Well, and one of Dell's ideas was we don't have any equipment.
So we bought some equipment. We had a hodgepodge thing kind of put together, and it worked. But I had to set the whole thing up every Sunday, and it was a big hairy deal. But like
setup
the
took
ideas,
at least an hour. And if you guys have ever volunteered at a church, like different volunteers touch stuff and move stuff. So sometimes it was 45 minutes, sometimes, and then sometimes it just wouldn't work, which is part of the reality of ministry. But
and then I was comments like, it doesn't look clean enough in there. You're not doing this. This should be better. This should be better. You don't have enough questions from Twitter for me. It's like, no one's tweeting anything at us because nobody does that, so we got to make it up. And then, Q&As and, being told like, well, these questions are irrelevant. Like nobody cares about that. Like questions about like end times weirdness and revelation and talk. Just there was different things of like, maybe is like Christian nationalism kind of an issue or like these things. And it'd be like, that doesn't matter. We don't talk about that. But I would always get comments of like, you're doing so good. It's so good. But like, you need to do this better and this and this. And you have a bad attitude. And I'd just like leave these meetings with him, just like
unless
constantly
he was
devastated.
just complicit and totally agreed. He was kind of belittled, which is so like I've never worked a job like that where when I provided constructive feedback, there wasn't at least a conversation about it. And like I don't think I've ever been belittled like he was.
And after a while, the calls for comments and critiques just kind of dried up. So and then I was pushed down from him as my boss to like another person because I had been like, I felt like I had been open and honest with, I have this project, I'm doing this thing, I've got 20 volunteers, we're doing really well, and you keep asking for more, and I just don't have time. And now, like,
he was on staff for 10 hours a week, getting paid like, was it minimum wage?
And I was the only one who also had a full-time job on top of it.
Yeah. So the request was full-time work for 10 hours of pay. And it was never just 10 hours a week. It was always that. And I don't think there was ever a raise. Yeah. There was never a discussion of, do we shift you to full-time? But moving us through my little timeline in my head. The other thing that we noticed happen is the budget kind of started changing. Yeah. And one of the things that changed was moving from fewer pastoral resources that were full-time to part-time resources cobbled together, which I understand, like there's budget challenges in church, so that's part of it. But I also wonder if the other part of it, which I don't have evidence for, is just my own thought was like that way there's fewer people in charge telling me what to do, and then I can just kind of move these other people around to do my little.
And as that started to happen on my side, they stopped printing the finances in the bulletin of like every week's, like how things were doing with attendance, how things were doing with, offering and things like that. At the same time, like we talked about this pastor, like it's cool. Like where else you're made to feel like this is it because we're super cool. And like, where else are you going to go? Because we're all kooky weirdos. Well, we're so quirky and crazy. We're like Christians, but we're cool.
And did it seem like this is the only place that you could be? Like you won't be welcomed anywhere else?
I think it was that, but also they would make fun of other denominations and say denomination X. I can remember him saying Catholics are so boring and like other churches are boring.
Contemplative worship is like sissy, wimpy, like
there was very
any contemplative sort of practice was very like masculine, macho, like we've got tattoos, we lift weights, we do rock music, like we're so cool. But it's this very specific like Gen X cool, like Fight Club and Braveheart, and like
I can do 100 push-ups on stage.
Yeah, so, like, that's the thing. So what really triggered me into being like, this is not like, oh, what is wrong with me, to like, this is not right, really hit hard when the Mars Hill podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill about Mark Driscoll, and just being how similar the two are. Like the emotional sort of like the love bombing, like, oh man, do this favor for me. Like, this is so great. Like, oh yeah. Like that kind of, I don't want to say grooming, but there would be people that would kind of be welcome into the inner circle to do various things. And some people would drift away. Some people would kind of just be there forever. And some people got like really, really, really close. And I saw that happen. And I kind of had this realization a few months ago. I was like, was he trying to like groom me and I escaped? Because it kind of feels like that. Like you mentioned this trip to Texas for this live stream thing. I don't even know. It was like a church live stream conference. I don't even know how it was found. But he takes me down there to Dallas and we go to this live stream conference thing. And it's literally only like 20 people. It's very small. But it's at this big church where he knows, because he's a professor as well. Some of his doctoral student like works there. And then the next few days we went around to like see his other students at these big churches that they work at. Like his one student who works at T.D. Jakes' church, or
See, I thought that name was like, I was like, am I making that up?
Yeah, and then like another church where this guy, and like now I look back and like all these people he's trying to introduce me to have all like their lives have all kind of fallen apart.
Oh no.
And, and T.D. Jakes he's got some stuff going on, and so like I have to jump ahead to summarize the whole experience. I felt like was we had like a debrief breakfast together after I quit, and I didn't quit out of like anger or rage. It was like,
no, like I was pregnant and we were going to have a family, and I think I said to him, like, I don't think we can be a new family, work our full-time jobs and do that.
Because it was so,
and Del was at the time was going to start his own company.
There was like absolute control. Like you can't say no. There's, we got to spin everything to be positive. We got to like do this, that, and the other thing. And so we're talking about the ministry, the live stream ministry. And he's like, so what should we do to like make it better for the future? And I was like, okay, here's what you're going to do. I had some pretty pointed thoughts about the way we do music and the way we cut and transition and the way we do this as like we're trying to make a TV show kind of thing, but we really need to be more casual, like people in the lobby on laptops, like chatting with some cut-ins of, just live, like we're here as well, like this more live experience and not like he wanted it to be more like a Sports Center talk show experience. And so I said that, and there were some other things. And he's like, well, why didn't you ever tell me that? Like, why didn't you ever tell me that? And I looked at him, and this is I never did this before, but I looked him straight in the eyes, and I'd never been able to speak like this to him without you're getting like talking to, or just like I'm a bad person. But I was like, I told you this like right after I started, and you told me that this thing was your idea. You're responsible in front of the elders. And so it's his idea. And that means if it goes bad, he can protect me from how angry the elders will be if I mess it up. He's doing me a favor by not listening to me. And I look at him and I was like, and he actually did like apologize.
That's
like, I'm
good.
sorry for that.
That's good.
And he did apologize for being really like he thought he was too hard on me, which that's, an understatement, but like I did appreciate that.
Yeah, that's something.
And as of right now, I don't know if I really feel much of anything about it. Like I feel like I've processed a lot, but I do feel like really disappointed and sad, and just my heart hurts I know for a fact, like I'm not the only person. Stephanie is not the only person that experienced abuse and trauma and hurt from WestWinds. I know that 100%, 200% even.
You were talking about, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of people out there, especially a secret church that brought so many people in and out. There's no way there's not dozens, if not hundreds of people. I think my brain, while you were talking, went to the people that stayed, or the people that were left behind, or the people that fit in. And perhaps maybe my biggest red flag to stack on the wall was I went into the church office, I don't remember, to talk to someone about a volunteer something or other. And I'd just come from work. I knocked on the door. I came in and it was smoky, and it was the church office. And I have asthma. And so I started coughing. I was like, oh, can I go in this room? Like, I'm worried I'm going to get a headache. And then I asked why it was smoky. And they said 2 of the female staff members and the head pastor were smoking cigars in the back.
In the office.
And I was just like, what? I thought that was, in what work environment, unless you're going out to like drinks like on a patio or golfing, or you're outside, like in what work environment are you working, writing a sermon, like smoke? And I'm not saying smoking's bad. That's not it. It was more like, how have you created an office environment where people are just smoking and it's chill?
Because it's still a workplace.
It's
and you're
still a
still
workplace.
indoors. And
You're
they're
still getting paid.
You're still like, I don't know, maybe churches are exempt from indoor smoking laws, so they can use decant like frankincense things. No smoking.
It was so odd. But then when I asked them, because I knew both of them pretty well, when I asked the two female staff members, I was like, don't you think it's weird that you're smoking at work? And they just looked at me with their head turned and they're like, why would we think it was weird? And I was like, oh, that's right. You no longer question him. Like you no longer have the ability to let's be honest, like if he's a huge abuser like that, they were taken in and abused. So let's give them that. But they are also adults that have consciousness and freedom and free will, and they were just totally gone. And these were smart people that were just smoked away.
Yeah, and that's the thing of like, well, they didn't know, or this is like somebody knew something because there's a pattern. And I think like there was a pattern of like, I've got power now and I'm going to get my people to protect me. And then there's no accountability and I can do church how I want. And I think there's a lot of pastors and people who wanting to go into ministry who feel that same way because they have a crummy church experience or whatever. Like, I'm going to do church my way. But then you can either like open that up to other people and like let it grow and breathe and like find unity and community amongst a lot of other people, or you can start shutting everybody out. And like, I feel like WestWinds, we did a lot of our own music. We did a lot of different music. And after we left, I felt so isolated from like Christian culture. Like I didn't know any of like any other worship songs or books or what was going on. And, maybe that's good because it's a lot of noise, but it was weird to feel like disconnected from like
What books did we read? What books did we read?
They were all
while
books
we were there?
It was all books that the pastor wrote. Self-published,
I'm just going to say this now. I'm being petty. Not a good writer. So I remember, I do think that's important because I remember being like, this isn't good. Like, it's not well written. So I didn't, at the time, I don't think I ever read anything. Like, it was just that all our materials were centered around this person. It's like even the books, like the worship, the live stream, all the staff.
It was very church driven by personality even. And it was like his personality was like, it was just all becoming like one thing. And we are more like working for a person's brand rather than God, I guess. I don't know. Jesus.
You're making my brain go to like how it gradually really started falling apart. Do you want to start going?
I don't know. You go ahead.
I feel like it was multifaceted, but at this point we'd probably been there 9 years, which I feel like is a very long-term relationship. And we knew everybody that we could, and we felt very connected. And we did have a good community of friends outside of that we loved. And then COVID happened, and that was hard for everyone in all churches. During COVID though, we were still tithing, and thankfully we still both had our full-time jobs, so we never reduced our tithing or had to, thankfully. And I remember thinking, I'm like, the church is going through a hard time. Let's keep tithing so that way we can still like contribute to this ministry. And then eventually, like a lot of churches, they had to reduce staff because people weren't going to church. There wasn't tithe. And when staff was reduced, the only people that were retained were the two people that were smoking cigars in the back. And meanwhile, and it was not staff members that if you had to do the cuts today in your head, you'd be like, I keep the head pastor, children's pastor, maybe worship, depending on what I'm doing, right? They kept the head pastor, an editor, and the worship pastor. I got the person that was left behind. It wasn't an editor. It was the graphic artist. Oh, I apologize sincerely.
This is a side note.
Fix that at the time.
Yes, very sorry.
Meanwhile, like teen ministry completely cut, children's pastor completely cut, or at least, put on pause for. Yeah. And I saw that and thought, what world is this the choice? Because I have a child at home and I need help. I need kids ministry right now because I don't know how to live through this pandemic. This is a church with a lot of families. And you are cutting a fantastic resource we could have, and without any reason to say the reason that we need an editor during this is because this person does what? And then when I realized the staff that were cut, it was completely because of personal relationships versus church need. Like there's no way it was matching what I needed, what my family needed, what any of our friends needed.
Yeah, I would have been, I mean, I guess I could have just Googled it myself, but to have some like family ministry supplements from my church during COVID time, I feel like that would make sense. But it was a much abandonment. And like, and then then they would even say like, oh, there's so much, people can't expect us to do everything. Like they'd be saying this. People are so mad we're not reaching out to them, but like, we can't do everything, guys. It's like, what? Like, isn't that a job of a pastor, I guess? But if you don't think that you're a pastor and you think you're more of this like talking figure, like a thought influencer, I guess that would make sense. But I think people get hurt because they come to a church thinking they're going to find a church where someone can take care of them. And I think WestWinds gives people a lot. I don't know about the current iteration, but previous WestWinds, I think, said they cared about people and showed it by giving them a lot of stuff
to do for
but
the
they
church.
didn't give them like actual real, like,
No,
I felt like real Christian community.
Well, and
like care.
I'm adding to that because during 2020, I had a baby. Like I gave birth to our second child, and I thought someone from the church would reach out to me and say, congratulations, like a message, a text, anything, nothing, like complete crickets. And I was just like, we've been here 10 years.
Mhm.
Like, I had a baby, I was pregnant. Like not a single whisper. And that hurt me so deeply. Like I was in kids ministry. I love children. And just nothing. It was bizarre. Like in what world do you not reach out to someone?
But I started to feel like, and I don't know if you've experienced this, where you it's like crazy feeling, but then you're like, no, this is on purpose. Because like the disruption of these relationships keeps you kind of dependent on them. Like, for example, you mentioned like the lack of relationships. Like there was a pretty vibrant like deacons, and then we were called coaches or whatever ministry, and then there were satellites. Everything
whatever
has
cool they,
I assume it changed every 3 years.
These were around pretty long.
Oh, okay.
These stayed around pretty long.
Not speaking from my own wounding or anything.
I know, not to disregard what you're saying, but I think Kyle's right.
But it was like, and then there were these satellite groups with these small groups, like kind of affinity by like age group or things like that. So we had all these little small life group kind of situations. And we had one that was really, really good. But then they just randomly out of nowhere, without really an explanation, they just totally dismantled that program. And they're like, we're going to just do something different. I'm like, okay. And then they come to Stephanie and I, who were leading this small group for them. And they're like, you guys have the best group. You guys really do it right. It's like, okay, we're not going to be supporting you anymore. It's like, okay, because we're not doing satellites anymore. It's like, well, can we be whatever you're doing now? Like, no, we're reorganizing how people connect this way.
I think we met consistently, like with different couples for honestly like 7 or 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Like we kept this group going. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's not just like a thing. Like we were there to be
we were
there.
At births. It was like we were at funerals. Like I remember a grandfather dying. Like we did life together, and then all of a sudden it was just dismantled. And I do understand church programs need to fluctuate and like budget, blah, blah, blah. But it was more like the way that changes were communicated, which we thought was a first red flag, I think, was just kind of like, oh, it's dumb, it's gone. Toodles, peace out. The Band-Aid was ripped off a lot because of the need to constantly innovate and change. And that was really hard for me. It felt like constant whiplash, and I felt really insecure and like unsafe because it was just like, where is any stability here?
There was a lot of whiplash, but it also felt like because of this innovation thing, and I think because of the pastor's position as like a doctoral advisor, and like we were in the paper, the New York Times, for having Twitter in church, and like we were doing these things, and he's writing so many books, which he would just like dictate to his phone, and then our friend who was an editor there would actually put it all together. Do you know he wrote my name? He talked about me in one of those books. He had a book about happiness. There's this whole thing about happiness. It was the worst pop psychology mixed with Bible stuff. It was very cringy. But anyway, and like the first, he talks about me and me saying something to him about how I call him like the Prince of Positivity, or I'm the Prince of, and I was like, I've never said, until this very moment, I've never actually said Prince of Positivity out loud. I swear to the Lord.
Oh, no.
Well, and in that, I remember it saying that you were the happiest person he'd ever met.
Which, that's weird. You need to meet more people because I'm pretty happy, but like can't be. That's not possible. And then like, he never asked me to be in this book. I never said any of those things. And it's just like made up. And again,
poorly written.
And
Did you confront him or say anything to him about that?
I think I was just so confused. I was just like, what? Like, that's weird. And it didn't really, it's kind of sat on me forever.
I think you bring up like a point where if I could do it all over again, now that I'm older and more confident or something, there were a lot of little things that were said, like sermons where it was something that I think was not just like something I disagreed with, but something that was offensive. Like one time they said, like, don't be fat, lazy, and stupid or something like that. And I remember thinking, I don't feel like that was necessary. And now I would talk to them after, be like, hey, by the way, tell me more about why you said that. But at the time, I didn't feel confident enough to do that because of whatever, like insecurity. And I don't know, I wish I could go back and change that and say, like, you might want to say that differently.
And that's the thing of like, you mentioned whiplash at church. And it wasn't just whiplash. It was, to me, it felt like I was in a laboratory of like the pastor having all these innovative ideas. As someone with ADHD, like I can definitely, like appreciate a good random collection of things. But it was like every few weeks or so, things would just change so dramatically. Like the entire stage would change, the entire auditorium would change, the ministries would change, how things were happening would change. Everything was just changing for like, it felt like for the sake of changing. And it was really like, whatever, throw it at the wall. And if it sticks, you don't need to use it. Throw more stuff at another wall now. And it just...
Well, and I can remember...
It would drive you mentally like crazy.
The other pastor that Del ended up reporting to told us that he tried to talk to the head pastor about how quick the changes were and tried to ask him, hey, could we organize some of these a little bit more so we know what we're doing? And the head pastor said, no, we'll just go with it. And then there were a few times where the just go with it erupted into chaos. Like we didn't know what was happening and it was really disorganized. And so I do feel like we probably had other examples where we tried to speak up. And it was never for me, I never experienced Del's full squash, like foot on your head, don't talk. But it was a lot of little moments where it was like, just don't bother. Like, it's not worth saying anything.
And I think that's part of why my brain is so scattered by all of it, is because there wasn't like a instance where one bad thing happened to me. Like a lot of these stories of church abuse, there's like people are getting like sexually assaulted and like these monumental single things are happening. And that never happened to me. But it was this slow trickle where now I get out and I'm just like, what was going on? Because it was like, you do this, you follow this, and if you don't, you're out. And you're made to feel like it's not just a privilege to be here, but it's tied to your spirituality because it's church and it's God. And that's why I think this could get into the area of like spiritually manipulating people. And I think that's terrible. Like this thing that God gives us to like live and grow and foster this like spiritual life of ours. And it's just to be just a con artist who takes that from people and uses it to make themselves feel better. And it's just really gross.
When we were there so long, and I'm really sad that we no longer went there. And I think it took 2 years before we felt safe enough to find a new home church.
It was at least 3.
Was it?
Yeah.
Do you mean like when you decided to stop attending WestWinds?
And we trying to think of like the final straw.
The final straw for you was probably pretty early. But like, just like, I had this big dream that I was like, no, you can change it from the inside.
I remember
this disorganization and kind of some of the weird like BS and some of the weird theology and some of the stuff. It's like, well, you work really hard and do good stuff. God can fix it. Which, okay, sure, fine. Didn't happen while I was there, but maybe it happened when someone else was. And so it was over time, it was just a lot of weird stuff. And I think for me, we had already kind of not been going because of COVID. I had already stopped working there, but we were still giving. We were still watching on Sunday live streams. And I think for me, it was when it was like the 2021 January 6th thing at the White House, the whole...
January
6th.
Yeah.
The January 6th, not the White House, at the Capitol. And then being like, thinking about like talking about how this spirit of nationalism is a church problem and being like, many years ago and being like laughed at about it, seeing this happen. And then on Sunday morning, the worship leader being like, hey, good morning, everybody. Man, world's pretty crazy, right? Let's worship God. And then right into the music and nothing else. And I was like,
I know,
we as Christians, we are responsible to say something about stuff that
Or
goes
at
on like
least
this.
anything. Like different people feel different ways about it, but I felt like you could at least acknowledge that a lot of people aren't feeling okay right now in any sense of the word. But instead, there was a lot of times where stuff like that was dismissed or laughed about. But I look back at it now and I think there's a lot of things that we were told like were too taboo or shouldn't be spoken of. And in retrospect, I think it was a way just to hide abuse. It's like we don't talk about these things so that way we don't have a congregation that will ever bring up like these bad things that are happening.
Yeah. So what did we learn?
I had my final straw.
Oh, what's your final straw? Oh, your final straw.
I've told this story too many times, but you're still giving blah, blah, blah. And I was driving through Jackson, COVID shutdown-ish times. I don't remember what shutdown, but I saw a line of people that were unhoused outside of Catholic Charities waiting for something like food, anything. And I just looked at this line of people and I was like, why am I still giving money to this church? They're cutting staff. We can't even be in the building. They're not, as far as I know, they didn't do any COVID ministry. And meanwhile, there's people, the children of God are starving and we're giving our money over here. This is so stupid. So I drove home and I told Dell, I'm like, we're going to stop tithing here and all of our money is going over there. And I will never tithe. This is me. I will never tithe like that again. It's like, I'll give to the church we're at, totally. But like, this is just
We were giving a
so
lot.
wrong.
We were all in.
And I did our taxes and realized how much money we'd given over the years.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to want to see that your tithe money is being used in a way that you would say is God honoring.
I thank
But you
you
can-
for validating.
You can
me.
only
I
do
needed
that. You can only do that when you know.
when you can see the church.
But then when you're not,
finances.
when
So
that's not
true.
available, and there's what he would call pastor math, where just numbers would just be made up, like. And like, this is not a real number. And it's like, you don't know. What is the money going to? Where did all that money that we were giving when the building was shut down, when they were employing 4 people, maybe they really didn't have that. Maybe we were the only people tithing. Good for you.
I mean, maybe like, because I know employment was hard, but I think what I was going to say to kind of wrap up is like, people have asked us if we would go back because I'd love to go back to the community or the building I was
Mhm.
at, but we ask people how much has changed because I would need to see an entire elder board turnover. Everybody needs to go. Not that all of them were bad, but like I need a complete leadership reset. I would need a leader to have full accountability. Like I want someone to say, I know I didn't do this, but I hear XYZ. And I want acknowledgement of sin. It's like we need to hold each other accountable. I don't need to flog the person that made those mistakes, but I want them to admit them. We forgive them. We have an accountability structure and we move on.
Yeah.
And none of that happened. And the last person I talked to just said, when I brought up some of the things that had happened, they're like, yeah, but just don't worry about that. And I was like, no, if we don't talk about this, if we don't acknowledge it and we don't fix it and we don't change our structure, it just happens again.
You can't fix it.
Because this is the second time this has happened to this church.
Yeah.
In 20 some years. So like this is now a structural problem.
Yeah.
Clearly.
They've had some pretty significant, like pastoral issues in the past with various things. And to see the pattern continue and to see like this, you can't solve a problem if you're not looking at it. I mean, maybe you can, but I can't.
Not when it's happened twice. And
Yeah.
you
And you just keep ignoring. And I see that.
you never talk about it and you just move on like nothing's happening.
And
We
this
don't
has
talk
been-
about Bruno.
Yeah, Bruno as the church.
Oh yeah, that works so well for that
Just lives in the
family.
walls and it's always here.
What happens in that movie when they don't talk about Bruno?
I feel like you'd smell him after a while.
You know, they never bring that up.
Except Bruno was actually a good guy.
I know.
That's the
Bruno's
thing.
Sorry to
Best
show
guy.
my cards, but that's the
no.
difference here.
Okay, evil Bruno.
Fair.
No, I just feel like, again, like I don't have that singular traumatic thing that happened, except I guess the whole
Yeah.
experience may have been, but it feels like it kind of wrecked.
slow.
It feels like it wrecked my brain, and I can't keep straight like when things happen. But what I do know is these senses of feeling of like I feel like I am in danger, and I feel like I don't feel like I have never felt. It's when you like if you think it's a spiritual thing, and then you go to therapy and you're like, oh, I'm having panic attacks because they kind of act the same way sometimes, or they feel the same way sometimes. And just how much of my life I was living in like fear and panic of like missing out on an opportunity God had been given me that was just somebody dangling stuff for me to do just to get me to do stuff with no, I feel like I was never like poured into in a significant way that would make me feel like I grew spiritually or as a person. I grew talents, I grew ability, I grew some experience that has helped me, but I did not become a better person through WestWinds.
Well, that's heartbreaking. Yeah, that was a long time too.
Yeah.
For a long time.
So I feel like we learned a lot. Like when we went on church, 3 years of church later, we had some, pretty not strict, but just like these are the things we're looking for.
After that experience, we wrote down the things that were important to us, like financial accountability, like having a structure of accountability, basic things.
Really, if we were going to write it down, like leadership accountability, like all around, with all of the leadership, pastor, and then accountability outside of the walls of the church with some higher organization that's not all just buds, So that would be one, like financial transparency.
Yeah.
And then
I think the others were more like our personal beliefs for what we wanted in a church. But I think this experience did inform like the church I'm no longer will ever go to, or the type of church I'm not interested in going to, which I think is unfortunate because it cuts out a lot of potentially great churches in town because I can't do it. It's like they're probably fantastic and amazing. I'll never try it because I'm so freaked out about what happened to us.
And I grew up contemporary church, like played it in my Church of God friends, youth group for a bunch of years in high school and, university worship band and played all kinds of stuff. And for me, a long time, that artistic expression was really what kept me part of church. And I thought that was really great. And I've just been so burnt out on that to where I got to a point where it's like, I don't care if I can be creative or not. I just have to get out of here. And that took a really long time for me to get to because I couldn't see myself being at another church and not participating and not playing music.
Well, and to be fair to Dal, what leaving, I'm saying what I think it would have meant to you. When we left, it really meant you were giving up on becoming a pastor. And we had to be okay with that dream dying.
Yeah. So we didn't
and letting go of that is.
We didn't want to leave our community.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to go anywhere else. And so that was like a dream dying kind of thing. Not dream dying, but
I also think that's why we held on so long. Because we're like, no, God is calling us to be abused by this narcissist. I don't know. but maybe, I don't think whatever God he was worshiping, I don't think was really God. I think it was something else and we just got swept away in it.
Yeah. So we learned a lot and I think I'm better now, but not because of them, in spite of them. In spite of them. It's a journey where you got better in spite of it, So that's there's tons more to unpack. We could come back for like a whole series of things, but that's just kind of the mishmash of the experience. And like I said, I know for sure that we're not the only ones who have felt burnt out, who had very close relationships that were severed, and the carnage left in people's lives by that former pastor is enormous. And I've been through church splits. My dad's a pastor. I've seen stuff, and I've never seen anything as bad as this personally in a church setting, as far as the abuse of people, the money, time, volunteers. It was horrible. And I know that it's been some time past and there's new leadership there as far as pastoral, but I do still feel that WestWinds as an organization owes the Jackson community like an apology for turning a lot of people away from Jesus because they were just not healthy,
misrepresenting,
toxic.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, maybe misrepresenting or just whatever they were resenting was this toxic, hype bro version of Jesus that just is not real or sustainable, and it's really. Like, I still think they owe that to people who have been there in the past who aren't there anymore, because that church put a lot of people through like literal hell, which is ironic.
Well, I have a question for you guys. Yeah. So we're friends. So you know that Kyle and I are 18 months since we left. So what is your advice, since you mentioned it had been maybe about 3 years from when you were able to maybe settle in a church or feel comfortable picking one? What advice would you give for people like Kyle and I, or anyone else listening who's kind of out of the fire but still processing?
I think like one thing we did in the interim, some of our friends just started a church and we knew we weren't going to end there because it was a far drive and some other things, but we just kind of found a safe place to land just to be okay for a hot minute. And I think that was helpful. And we were transparent with them when we started. We were like, we're probably going to come here a year and then we're going to find like a different church. But I think for me, in the past few years, I feel like there's a lot of negative stuff going on in the world, and the world feels very tumultuous. And in the past, I think it was last year, I felt like things were bubbling up where I said to Dal, I'm like, I really need a home base of believers that feel safe and like we're going to be okay. And it was, I think enough time had just passed. And I felt the calling again to come back. But I don't know, like part of me is like, maybe if Dell and I weren't married, I would have just stayed at home every Sunday, because I think church seeking is one of the hardest things you can ever do. It's so vulnerable. It's so taxing. If you have kids, are they going to like it? I don't think it's an easy thing to do. So I get why it's hard for people.
Well, and having 2 weekend days is awesome.
It is pretty cool.
It was kind of rad.
I know, like going from being at church for 4 to 6 hours every Sunday to sleeping.
Oh, the Lord rested. I think for me, it's like, it took me a long I realized that I could never, for now, I can't go back to like a contemporary church setting, because it's so loaded with, I feel like, a lot of symbolism and a lot of meaning and messages that I don't think the people who are leading it really understand what they're saying or talking about. And I feel like people really go on vibes and feelings, which is, that's fine. But then don't say it's not. Don't talk about this being the Holy Spirit or God speaking to you, when we are literally doing things in music that you can make people feel anywhere. Like, just be honest with your worship, be honest, be consistent. And I think the tips for me would be like, it's okay to be picky. If you go to a church and they don't have security for children,
And that's
you don't have to go
important
there. You don't have to do that. If you don't feel like they like have good open stance on like being open with their finances, like you can ask. And if they give you a problem, like, yeah, probably, because they don't know who you are and you're asking to see all their money. But like, you can ask, and I want to see how they
Church we're
respond.
at now just prints off finances and sends them to everybody. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't think
So I wrote
it's not
down.
actually a hard ask.
No, it's really not that hard. Just ask for
Kyle would know
money.
that better than I would.
You're speaking my language here.
Find a church that's okay with you like asking questions and not like dismissing you.
And at our recent church meeting, didn't you go line by line through like every budget item? And there was like a $64 change, and he talked about why. I was like, I don't care about $64, but thank you.
Yeah, I would say like be picky. It's okay to ask questions. And I know, like, if you ever get bit or by a dog or scratched like by a weird animal or something. If you get
A
bit by
weird
snake,
animal.
If you're a hunter, have you gotten bit by like a squirrel or something?
I am not.
Well, I know, like,
I've got some stories of being scared by squirrels when I thought they
Yeah,
were
that's fair.
bears and things like
Right.
that. But
I feel like a lot of churches, so I say this because I feel like a lot of churches, for people who've been hurt, their message is like, well, just come, like, you'll see. It's like, for someone who's been attacked by like a dog, it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll trust this dog. It's like, no, you need time, or maybe find a different kind of animal, because like anyone who's pressuring you in your like mourning, in your time of processing of like, well, our church is different. People are like, well, I got bit by this kind of dog. Well, these are so different. It's like they're barking at me loud and they look kind of crazy. You don't have to put up with that. You can be picky and you can find a place. And I think that, and for me, my faith really stayed by just leaning into my family, like Stephanie, our children, like my friends, and like the things that I feel like God has given me that I have right now. And that was really sustaining, and really like finding some community like online and with some other friends outside of church. Totally. I feel like I grew more spiritually with those conversations than I had in the last 9 years. And that has been really good. And I feel right now, today, it's like I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible. Those are our tips.
Thank you personally, and to everyone else listening. I think they're thankful too, right? That was stupid.
yeah. Do you
That outward.
mind if I name the person that we've been beating around the bush? If not, I'll name them later on a different episode, because this is the first.
No.
This is not the only one here, folks.
Yeah. That's the thing. So, I mean, yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, who we've been talking about is Dave McDonald, currently of Thesaurus House, I think is how you pronounce it here in Jackson. And why right after we went public with the Radiant story, we had multiple people from WestWinds reach out to us independently And none of those people were Del and Stephanie.
Yeah,
We both
they're not
talked
here.
to later, who came to, again, not knowing the other people had come to us. And since then, I've actually met with the current pastor of WestWinds about all this. And so, yeah, we'll be talking about this more. But if, like, the guy's still in ministry, he's in a ministry that trains other pastors, that's why I'm doing this, because I want to get a word out there. Like, we need to mark and avoid him. But I'm assuming you haven't talked with him since anything. I guess, what would you, if you could say something to him, or I guess, first of all, has he ever repented for any of this outside of just that breakfast when he said sorry?
I know. I do know that, for a year or two, I would just get a random text from him out of the blue, and it's that's a way to mess up your day. Of just being like, "Hey, man, hope you're doing good. Thinking about you." And it's just but that was part of his thing. He would just text people if ever he thought of them, and it was his pastoral way of keeping in touch with people, and it made people feel nice. But being so far out of the loop, it was just this is weird. And then one time he did that, and it coincided with something that someone in his orbit did with me, as far as an apology. And then he messaged about "Oh, hey, I don't know what happened between you and me. I don't know what's going on," because I'd been on TikTok and talking about church drama and processing some of my stuff there. He's I don't know what you're talking about. I don't feel bad. And I don't have these texts because I just
He did reach out right when the new pastor was getting installed, which was
and then
very,
it was always,
I have no proof, but that's very coincidental.
He would reach out, but it was always at times when other things also happened. And maybe I was just being too sensitive and also cynical at the same time. Of course this is, but yeah, but it was just I think I messaged.
I always thought though too, I went there too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. They've never reached out to you about anything.
Sounds familiar.
And just for context, I talked to our pastor last week about a prayer request. I emailed him for follow-up, and then he's like, "Yeah, hey, are you okay? Do you need to get coffee? Make sure you're fine," or whatever. That I never had anyone reach out to me, apologize. And part of me was I'm the one who probably would have brought us back. I'm the one who would have talked to you. I'm the one that would have been okay, let's sit down. Let's figure this out. What are we going to do? And you're reaching out to the wrong person because of what? So, okay, it's so weird. But also, what about me? It's I was there too. Didn't I matter?
You could do another whole episode on Stephanie's side of things.
No, I think it's good. I think we talked about a lot. What about the women?
What about the women? That's the thing.
That is a good question.
That's the thing. Well, they were all part-time.
Yeah.
Okay, so one other question I have is, if there are people who are listening who are in different churches around the country and they're hearing some red flags that they have been putting off in your story, what would you say to them?
I would say trust your gut. Trust your gut. Because I do feel that sometimes, especially in evangelical church settings, there's well, don't trust your feelings. It could be the devil tempting you. It's or it could be just being this is actually bad. Maybe this is actually bad and unhealthy. If you're feeling that tug, something's not right, it probably isn't. I feel churches are a place where churches are going to be all different. And I don't want to make a generalized statement, but if you are at a church and you're it could just be not for you, because there's any flavor of church. If you feel something's not right, you're probably right. And
I
just
appreciate
go.
you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I didn't learn to do that.
Well, and
up.
I think along the way, with WestWinds, I would say things in our small group, and I would say, wasn't it weird that this was said from the pulpit? But there was that culture of we don't say anything. So, and I didn't trust my gut enough to be this should be, even if it's not a red flag for other people, if it's a red flag for me, I should listen to that. I would also add, I think another thing that helped us is Dell's sister is a pastor and sent us a quiz on spiritual abuse, which
I wonder if it's the same one.
I think it's the one that you guys had mentioned. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I remember taking that and being I didn't know I would have that high of a score or lower score or whatever it was at the time. So I do think if you're questioning it, maybe not trusting your gut, there is that more scientific instrument to help you align it.
If you are trusting your gut and someone's telling you no, it's not God. It's no, I think God gives us your gut to help you make decisions.
Well, and I think there's also the biblically, I know what you should do. You should go talk to the person. If the person doesn't listen, you should go talk to the group. If the group doesn't listen, you should walk away. But that's really easy to say. But church has such a weird power dynamic. And there's a lot of, I don't know, child origin issues that you play out on other people that we probably played out too. So saying that is one thing, but doing it is so dang hard. Like you have to have, I don't know. It's really hard. And it doesn't mean they'll listen.
So then my last one would be just know that like pastors aren't better than you. And this is not to disparage pastors. Like my dad's a pastor, my sister's a pastor, my beloved, I have a cousin, she's a pastor. I have no pastors coming out to my eyeballs, they're everywhere. And like,
but not you.
No. Did you know that I got rejected from Moody 2 times?
You did?
Yes.
You never told me
so
that.
sad.
Didn't your
I wanted to go
sisters both get accepted?
They did. My sisters got accepted and I didn't.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, so distraught. But now I'm fine with that.
Think of what you could have
I
been.
could have. What have I become? So your pastor, they are people. And a lot of them will just admit we're just people. But because of their relationship, I think, to God and church and us, there's this like mythos isn't the right. There's this like aura of like extra specialness.
Yeah.
Like their job is literally to study the Bible and like talk about it and then like be cool to people. Like that's all. That is a lot of work, but it's like you can't be so like. But they're just still people,
Yeah.
Like if you see Hugh Jackman training to be Wolverine in a movie, he looks good because he gets paid millions of dollars to do that. If I had millions of dollars to work out or study the Bible, I would also be very, very good at that. But that doesn't make me a better person.
Yeah.
They are not better than you. They are people.
That makes them
That makes you should if they are not allowed, if you're not allowed, I'm saying that because some churches treat their pastors like they are not approachable, like they're above reproach. And if you're in a system where the pastor is above reproach, where you do not question the pastor, where the pastor is protected from hearing questions, where the pastor is very clearly like maybe verbally welcome, but not like if there's that air of like they're you don't need to put up with that. They have a job and they have a life, and like you can't just walk into your work and say, "Hey, Kyle, I need you to do this for me right now." Like you're busy, you're busy. But you can have those conversations without coming across of like their ask is not valuable or doesn't matter. They can still treat you like a human, and you should expect that. You should expect to be treated by a human from whatever church you're going to.
Gosh, the bar sure was.
I know, isn't it?
Yeah,
I was like, this is really depressing, actually.
It's tragic, but it's true. Yeah, because
it seems logical, and yet here we are.
Yeah,
I know.
You're above reproach comment. That's a big pet peeve of mine. That like that's a qualification that they need to be above reproach. It doesn't mean that because they are a pastor that they are. That means they can't be reproached. No, like in my opinion, to be above reproach, you have to respond when you are reproached, not just be like, no, we're just gonna act like that never happened. That person will just get rid of them.
I thought it was. And then to see that it's clearly I must have been wrong, because that doesn't seem to be what's been happening in a lot of these church situations. But those are good questions. So thank you.
Yeah.
So do you have a question?
Oh, I just say, do you have anything else I heard it said that WestWinds had a big front door and a big back door with lots of people coming in and getting hurt and leaving.
Yeah.
Do you have anything for those? I mean, it's quite honestly probably thousands of people in the Jackson area that have gone through those doors.
Do you like a hospital and they bring down the bed, but then they just like take you out the back into the parking lot and leave you there, and then be like, hey, make sure you come on Sunday. It's like, I'm hurting. I need more than just fun songs. But for the people that have been hurt, that you were hurt, and don't let anybody tell you different. If you had an experience similar to ours with these individuals, you were very likely part of like an abusive environment. And if you feel hurt, it's because you were. And you're not alone. There's other people who have also been hurt. And there are other people who want to talk about it and who want to share in that mourning of losing, in some cases, like your faith, your community, your family. Like you're not alone. And you can reach out to people who are willing to talk to you about it, like Kyle and Laura.
I don't know why, but it came to my head that God loves you, and bad churches aren't God. They're bad people or people doing bad things, abusing God. And church is great and it's important, but if you're in a moment where you can't be there, wherever 2 or more meet, there I'll be. Like you don't need a whole body if you're in a hard spot. Like just try one person and like you'll find God there. It doesn't have to be a whole building. Like you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, we always have one question that we end for our guests, and I didn't write it down correctly, so I don't remember what it is. We will have Mark edit that out. Do you remember what it is?
Oh, yeah, just being titled Faith in the Fallout. Like you've already hit on this a bunch of times, but what's one thing that in the fallout where God came through?
I've had this during the podcast, but I think I want to give us credit that I feel like this person, this Dave guy, this situation could have broke our marriage. And for a lot of people, their marriages didn't make it through West Winds. And I'm grateful that God brought us through all this together and our marriage stayed intact. And we did talk to each other the whole time.
There, yeah, we did. I told her everything that was going on, and you were like, "What?" And I'd be like, "I know, right? That's crazy, right?" And then we just kept going along.
Preaching to the choir.
That's weird. Keep moving. Don't look at the man behind the curtain.
That's a great.
I think it forced me to rethink about my faith in some pretty significant ways. Being a musician and being musical, like I've been playing music in church since I was like 10, and now I'm 40. It was been like 30 years of that is church, when I get to play and experience that as like that's how I like experience God in like this church settings, and that's what was fulfilling. And to one, because of COVID, but then to have this place where like I don't think I ever want to do this in church again, because this whole music thing is just like the contemporary music thing at that church was just so. And there's just so much weird stuff with all of the big bands and everything. It's just all weird. I don't want to get involved and sing songs by Hillsong, who's got people who've been abusing people writing their songs. It's like, I don't want to sing these songs.
Yeah.
Theology's weird. I don't want to do it. And so knowing that that's off the table for me for at least a while, I've had to really look at everything differently. And so whether it be like podcasts, like I'm reading about, Quaker living and Quaker theology, and
You read a
sitting
really
in silence.
a massive book on Judaism.
I read a lot about, it's called, I forget what the name of it, but it's all about
Yeah.
Judaism and kind of like their interpretations of, our scripture and some other
Didn't you read through
things.
the Apocrypha? Like you read
Apocrypha.
just all the books.
I read a bunch of like
accumulated.
Buddhism stuff. And the thing
Yeah.
about it, with all these things I was reading, everything did to feel like it came back to Jesus. Like this idea that there is this person, this thing, this Christ that wants us to have a relationship beyond ourselves with something greater than us. And that is real. And like, I've found that with my faith in Christianity, and I was able to find it even when that building was removed and totally dismantled, and to realize like, well, it's nice to have church, but I don't need it for my faith to grow. It's helpful to have community.
I agree with that.
Then realizing that community then plugged into church, you start kind of like getting good momentum with things. And if those two things are healthy, like you're in a really good place. So I would say like, just keep curious. If something you want to read about, you're not doing church stuff. If you want to, for your devotions, read about like Abraham Lincoln or something and learn, go for it. He was a very interesting man.
Yeah, he was. He had a whole lot of faith.
So yeah, just stay curious and maybe explore parts of your faith that they wouldn't let you question before, and just try to dive into those topics, and, you'll find those communities and who can help you talk through them.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Anything
Thank you
else
for having us.
Laura, before we...
No.
Yeah, we let you back on for, every 6 months or so. So anything else you want to say
me?
before we...
No, I'm
Appreciate
just glad to be here and that I could take part in this interview with you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. As always, as we said before when we've interviewed people, you can reach out to us, and if appropriate, we will forward your messages on to Dal and Stephanie. Keep things cordial.
Yeah, and
As
those
always.
of you who know them, reach out to them directly. They're fine. But yeah, on the website, faithinthefallout.com.
You can comment here on Spotify. You can comment on YouTube. We'll see it. We'll respond. If you are leaving any kind of criticisms, please give examples and be specific. And we would love to have some discourse with you over that.
Yeah. And thanks for listening. All the things I'm supposed to say, like, subscribe.
Like, share,
Yes.
hit that bell.
But yeah, I think that's it. I think Mark will be back with us again shortly. So
Yeah.
those of you who are just here for Mark, you can get Henny maybe next time. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.